High vibrations, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bringing It Home with C.N.Smith. I am your hostess, Christina Nicole Smith. Some of you may know me by my Aboriginal name, Adelohosgi. I want to take a moment to thank every single person that supports the channel through PayPal and CASHAPP. It allows me to continue to bring this important message of homeschooling future generations to the collective. It's truly a blessing, and I'm sending waves of prosperity back in your direction. Also, thank you for liking and sharing our videos. It means so very much to me. On today's show, my guest is a wife, mother of two, home birth educator, prenatal instructor, and the newly elected Chief Minister of Births for the Aboriginal Republic of North America. Whew, what a mouthful. Nyima Xi Amaru sounds like a very busy woman, but she's not too busy to join us today and tell us exactly why the time is now for women to give birth to their children in the home, as well as provide a homeschooling education. Before we get started, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when we upload our latest content, as well as click on the like button, comment. Please share and help get this positive message out about homeschooling our children. Okay, everyone, get comfortable while I get Nyima on. Greetings, Nyima. How are you doing?
Peace, Christina. I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad you are joining us today. And you know, if people notice the different background, we were having some technical difficulties outside with the internet, so I brought things inside. But before we dive into today's topic, can you share with the people what a home birth educator and prenatal instructor does?
Yes, for sure. So my company, eShell Birthing, I have a course called Black to Birth. And so in that course, I walk Black couples and also birth workers through the process of having a healthy conception, pregnancy, home birth, and also breastfeeding experience. And so some people don't realize that a healthy home birth actually starts at conception. That in order to have all the things you want to have, ultimately to have that healthy experience, you have to start all the way at conception and sometimes beforehand, depending on the diet and the lifestyle. So I am a home birth educator. I teach couples and birth workers how to successfully have this beautiful, healthy experience with their baby. And as a prenatal yoga instructor, the focus is really on healthy movement for the mom while she's pregnant. So that movement is to help to keep blood flow, to keep oxygen flow to the uterus, to the baby, also to help the mom's body be strong and flexible. Sometimes during pregnancy, we get, back pain and aches and cramping. So really going through a yoga flow that's catered to a pregnant woman keeps her body strong to alleviate or to avoid those back pain, avoid sciatic pain, things like that. And again, to get all that healthy blood flow and oxygen to baby. And then lastly, one of the biggest things is also breathing. So we go through deep breathing, which is really important during labor and birth as well. And again, that deep breathing helps to keep the mom calm and at ease and peaceful, which again helps the baby remain peaceful as well. It helps the mom to avoid having high blood pressure because she's really at peace and calm and relaxed as well. So that's kind of just.
That's amazing. I wish I would have met you before I had my last child almost 6 years ago, because that's information we're not taught. And so you do very, very important work. So from your perspective as a wife, mother, home birth educator, and prenatal instructor, why do you say that home is the sanctuary for giving birth and educating our children instead of hospitals and schools? Now, I think we can kind of understand right there, before you even answer, all the things that you said that are important. I know when I gave, I had one child with a midwife and then one child at the hospital, but all those things that you were saying, I was not really given some of this information. So tell us why this is your perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, home is supposed to be our sanctuary. Home is where we we return from all the energies outside, good and bad, right? All the
Yes.
work and things like that, traffic, the noise, all those things, right? So we're returning back home to that place. It's supposed to be our sanctuary. And it's the place where we've established all of our traditions and our rituals, you know, teaching our children how to eat, how to play, how to share, holidays, you know, meal time, saying prayers and affirmations. So this is where all these things naturally happen. So we're naturally nurturing and naturally educating and learning at home. So for me, it's a rightful place to bring forth life and also to have your children educated in that space where they're comfortable and where they're relaxed and where they're familiar. So when you look at hospitals, you know, what do we have? We have noise, machine noises. You know, we have sick people. We're not with sick people, right? When you're giving birth, you're not sick. You're in, actually, you're supposed to be in your most optimal, healthy state, but you're around other people who are sick, right? We have pharmaceutical drugs around us, you know what I mean? So we have these kind of things happening. So we have noise, we have drugs, we have people who are sick around us. And that is the opposite of what's happening at home. At home, you can have your essential oils, your relaxing music. You know, also in hospital, you have that weird gown with the back out. I mean, those gowns are weird, man. Like, who wants to walk around like that? And when you're giving birth, again, it's like, the baby's coming out here. Why do I have this hole in the back? You know what I mean? So at home, you can wear what you want to wear. Again, play music, the sounds, the sense. You can eat. In hospital, when you're giving birth, you know, they tell you can't eat. They give you some kind of weird jello mix, like what's in that thing, you know? But at home, you can have your coconut water, your watermelon, or whatever you want. And then you can eat immediately after you give birth. You know, your midwife and your doula, your birthing team are going to provide you with a beautiful meal that you wanted. And then to the school system, you know, it's similar. We have a lot of times teachers that don't look like our children, you know, teaching them. We have a curriculum that's not catered to their innate gifts and abilities. We have overcrowded classrooms. So all these things are happening, but when you're at home, you can cater all those things to your child. Like, oh, my child is very musical. He learns, you know, with sound and musical and beat. But if he's in the classroom, they're going to overlook that because they don't have time to dive into that quality. So he can learn much faster. I mean, I saw a preschool or daycare, they were doing these puzzles and it was like 20 pieces, you know, for his age group at 3. And he just turned 4 and he's doing 100 pieces and plus. So I'm like, there's a regression that could also happen because we noticed that our son loves puzzles. So we keep buying him more puzzles because we're catering to what he likes, you know, how his learning style, and he can continue to grow. So home, again, can be catered, you know, whatever that you want it to be. You know, it's flexible where those institutions, it's called institution that has a certain structure that is catered to not you, because let's keep it real, not you, and you can't really be flexible in that system. So that's kind of the long answer of, you know, why I feel like home is where birthing and schooling should be.
Okay, and so I let everybody know before you came on when I introduced you that you are the Chief Minister of Births for the Aboriginal Republic of North America. And so when you were saying we're surrounded by people that don't look like us, I want you to expound upon that because I know it's important for Aboriginal people for when the women are giving birth, it is important for certain things to be in place for Aboriginal women to be comfortable. And so can you just also just speak to that too? Because I know that there are some people here who watch this show that are not Aboriginal, but can you explain why that is so important for Aboriginal women to have certain conditions? We need to have our traditions in place and things of that nature. So could you please speak to that as the Chief Minister of Births?
Sure, absolutely. So to put it simplistically, people who are like each other, they know what their problems are, they know what their solutions are, and they know how to get from that point A to point B. If someone doesn't look like you, they're different ethnicity, different culture, they don't understand your history, they don't understand the problems that you have right now, and they definitely don't understand how to solve those problems. So if you are a Black woman, a black man, Black woman having a baby, and your midwife and your doula are also Black, they understand what's happening in the hospitals, right? And why we need to be at home. They also understand what our culture is, and the fact that we have been giving home births since the beginning of time. People sometimes think that home births came about during slavery and we had to do it, you know, out of lack of resource, but actually this is the proper way to do it. When you know your history and you know your culture, we're now, you know, reclaiming that history and reclaiming that culture. And your birth workers, if they're in that world, they're also in a traditional cultural place as a birth worker. That is a really ancient position to be in, you know, that women were surrounding the mother to bring forth life. So again, if we are the same culture, we know our history, we know our problems, we know our solutions. You know, people who are not of us are not going to see things in the same way. They're not even going to understand what you need. They're not going to understand fully, you know, why do you need to do that? Why do you need to have candles and incense, you know, burning? Why do you need to have this tribal music playing in the background? Why do you need to have certain massage? Like, these are all of our cultural practices that we're beginning to reclaim. And so having people in the room that look like us, and even energetically, you know, not to get, as they say, spooky, but energetically speaking, we have a certain energy and aura and vibe, right? Even the sound of our voices are sometimes deeper and more methodical and things like that. So I think there's a certain rhythm and a certain energy that we also bring when we're in a room with people who look like us and see us, or can also see us as equal to each other and not, you know, you're of other. And so I don't recognize when you're in pain. Historically speaking, we have been experimented on. So if that's been followed in their history, right, and they're still seeing you as that experimentation, then when you're calling out for help and you need assistance, their view of helping to solve that problem for you is not going to be the same as a Black midwife and a black birth worker. So
there's definitely a certain mentality out there. I think just in general, what it seems like that the sacredness of a woman's position in being able to bring forth life into this world, and also being the first nurturer and the first teacher, just the way society is set up now, it's generally not respected. And I hear a lot of people wanting to say, well, let's get back to old values, old traditions. And usually what I'm seeing, it also seems to me the Aboriginal way of thinking, because Aboriginal people are connected and more in harmony with the earth. And so before things were changed.
Right.
And so I think people are more in harmony with that now, and they want to see this spirit or this vibe, this energy, this frequency to come back. And so let me ask you this. What are some of the concerns that expecting parents are having in your practice?
I think some of the major things I've seen so far are couples are concerned with having to transfer to the hospital. So that's one of the biggest things I hear, where they're in a home birth. They said, well, what if something happens? So they're still in a state of emergency. Like, what if this crazy things happen and I have to go to the hospital and not able to have the home birth? Also, people are really concerned about being able to breastfeed, you know, with the formula recalls and things like that. People are like, well, I want to breastfeed, but my first experience was so horrible that I'm like traumatized. You know, baby was biting my nipple, baby wouldn't latch, you know, I had low supply. So they're really concerned about their ability as a woman to be able to do that. And also lack of support from family and even friends who are like, you know, girl, just put them on Similac, it's fine. So yeah, so definitely hospital transfer, not being able to breastfeed. What's some other major concerns? I would say just having a healthy pregnancy without all the complications you hear about, like bed rest and preeclampsia.
Yeah.
So I think people are also concerned about, women are concerned about
that
how
other
to have a pregnancy
gestational,
without all those things.
I've heard of women having gestational diabetes too. Is that one of the things that people are concerned about too?
Yes, for sure. They're concerned about those things, like how to avoid it. Like, my mama had those things, my sister had those things, my friend had those things. So how do I avoid all these really common things? And then also C-sections. How do I avoid it? And like I was saying in the beginning, people don't realize that in order to avoid all those things, it starts all the way at conception. This isn't just kind of a whim, like, luck of the draw. This is not something random, that there is a process and a way that you can have a healthy experience. And in my course, I teach, go through 4 modules that go through food, that go through mindset, movement, and planning. And all those things help you from conception all the way through breastfeeding. And once you're in that structure, in that system, then it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to have a healthy experience. And this is not some kind of, like, again, some kind of random, who gets to have a healthy experience, who doesn't. It's like, if you follow what your body and what nature has designed for you to do, which we've been doing, then you can have an optimal experience.
I think this is this conversation we're having right now is so important because one of the things that that is missing now is sisterhood and women trusting their bodies to do, like you said, what is natural, and then having the elder women who've already given birth surrounding the younger women and supporting them during their pregnancy and childbirth. So I think the work that you're doing is so very vital to bring this type of information back to women so they can feel confident in something that is so natural for a woman to do. And also, as far as just with teaching children, I had a guest on, one of our sisters, Destiny Burns, not too long ago, and she talked about that, why do you feel like you can't teach your children now that they've turned 5? Why do you feel like you can't do that anymore? And so this is why, that's another thing that I want you to expound upon, because if we can bring the trust back to ourselves as women to say, okay, I trust my body to give birth naturally at home.
Yeah,
and I can do that. This is something that is very, very natural for me to do. I was born to do this.
Right. Yep.
And if we can bring the trust back to say, you know what, I taught my baby I encouraged them to walk, right? I supported them during that process, and all these other things I supported my child to do. Can you expound upon that we need to, that trust starts with the pregnancy, right? And giving birth. And if we can do that, that trust then, rolls over into us being able to homeschool.
Right.
You want to speak to that?
This is great, because this is bringing up the combination of the two. So we don't have the trust because we haven't been taught, right? We didn't see our mothers giving birth at home, right? So this is combining the homeschool and the home birthing, right? My eldest son, who's 4 now, he saw our 12-month-old come out, right? So when he's older and he's supporting his wife, he's already experienced that. This is not going to be, he's not going to be like, oh, baby,
honey,
like,
no.
Baby at home, because it's like, yeah, my mom did that and I was there and I was 4 and I saw it, right? And she wasn't, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't crazy, it wasn't traumatizing, it was beautiful and it was happy, right? So it really shows that because we didn't have that example, now we've lost the trust, because like you said, with the baby walking, the baby knows how to walk because the mama is there, but because your mother helped you walk and their mother, right? So it's like we've been educating at home, but this part about home birth, that's the part that we've lost, right? And you brought up the elders too, that we don't have, that circle of elders around us who are our family, right? Who have gone through these experiences. Many of our mothers and grandmothers had these traumatic births, right? This is by design, by the way, that's another conversation, but this is by design, right? Systematically, that they've had these very traumatic experiences, right? And so to get that trust back, it does now start with us, because we didn't get that. We love our mothers and our grandmas, but unfortunately we didn't get that from them, right? So I think just knowing that you were born with all of these tools inside for you to make this happen, all of these beautiful sequences that happen with your hormones and things click on when you have a baby, like all these things just happen, like your body produces milk. I mean, this is phenomenal. And the milk is perfectly designed for your baby at every stage. When they have a cold, your body knows they have a cold. If they have a fever, your body knows they have a fever. If they're teething, I mean, all of these things, your body is like, oh, more protein, more fat. I mean, it's constantly adjusting to your child. Even the skin to skin, where you put your baby on your skin and you're declothed, and you can regulate their temperature. I mean, our bodies have been designed. I mean, it's phenomenal. Every machine and computer is based on our body's design, right? And so to sit in the quiet and understand what you innately have, what the creator has already put inside of you, and to think that you have to now go outside to get that baby out of you when you created that without the hospital, there's a disconnect. So we have to go back and say, wait, so I created this in peace and in quiet with my spouse, with my husband, but now I have to go somewhere else to get the baby out. I can't do that part, but I built a baby from this size to 8 pounds. I mean, like, we have to, with lungs and a heart and a spleen and a spine. I mean, so I think just sitting in a quiet, turning off the computer, turning off the traumatizing videos, and just understanding all the amazing things that your body is naturally able to do if you support it properly will begin to bring back that trust.
You know what, Nyima? I think that is so very true. There is something that's going on. I think it's been generational, where women are taught not to trust ourselves. And then we're kind of going into some other territory here with this comment, but there's also been some distrust built up between man and woman as well. Absolutely. And so it just it has like a ripple effect. And so if we it really does start with the women. It really does, because we bring forth the next generation. We bring forth the generation. So if women start trusting themselves more, that they can give birth and they can also educate their children, and things will start to come back together. It's almost like a rebuilding a family that needs to happen. We need to rebuild our families, because there. Successful communities and things of this. So speaking on that note, I want to know from you as a mother, what are some of the things that concern you about the current state of the public educational system? I touched on that, but can you expand upon that?
Yeah, and before I get to that question, I wanted to respond to something else you said. So when it comes to the distrust between men and women, that's also by design, the dismantling of the Black family. Okay, we know that that's real, because a lot of the people I've come across, the men are terrified of the home birth, right? And so women naturally look for our men for protection and security, right? So if our spouse is concerned, then imagine the distrust and the worry that has instilled in us, right? We're already naturally worriers, right? We want things to be well. And so we're looking at a husband and he looks uncomfortable. He didn't feel like he could protect us in that mode, so that we feel like we won't be protected in that mode, right? So really helping our husbands as well. That's why I encourage couples to take my course together, because we need our men to also be educated about our bodies in the process. We're not taught proper education about our bodies in school.
Yeah.
We have sex ed that is kind of a distorted view of that whole thing. But we're not going into detail in a holistic, healthy way, nurturing way, right? Which can be done at home to help little boys, little girls understand what's happening. So when they're men and when they're women, they have a trust in their own bodies and how this whole thing works. So that distrust is broken down all the way at a small child. Even the movies, they show women giving birth and they're screaming their head off. And so little boys see that too, right? They see that too. And so it's all programming, right? So they're like, I'm not going to do that at home because we need a doctor, because this is an emergency. This is not a natural, perfect thing happening. This is an emergency that can be scary, right? So that trust has to be reinstilled by us understanding as women who we are, our power, and then also by getting proper education as well. So I just want to touch on that. So you were saying, what are the concerns now that I have?
About the current state of the public education system.
Okay. I would say one of the biggest things, having 2 Black boys, I know that Black boys get sent to detention quicker, and more often. They get labeled as having ADD or ADHD. My boys are very active and healthy. They don't eat sugar and processed food, so they have very natural high energy. And so my concern is them being labeled as hyperactive, being sent to detention and reprimanded. My also concern is them not having teachers, having educators and nurturers who will look like them as well, back to that whole cultural, historical things, and having education that helps them to, again, understand the problems they will face as an adult and helping them find solutions for that. It's a generic curriculum teaching 1, 2, 3, ABC, dissecting a worm. And there's some things that's like, we're never going to use that. What is this all going to be for? I took, advanced calculus. I don't use that at all, right? What was the point of that? I could have been tapping into my innate abilities and qualities and doing birth work maybe back then, right? Like, where would I be now if, that was understood? This was my natural calling, right? So generic curriculums, being reprimanded, and then also the bullying and teasing that happens in school, right? My children are eccentric and interesting and ask questions and inquire about things. And children always find in that structure, in that system, they find ways to bully and tease each other. I think it's because they have a lot of insecurities and they're also worried and uncomfortable in those settings. So teasing and bullying on the playground and fighting and things like that. When I reflect back on my own experience in elementary through high school, it wasn't phenomenal. You know what I mean? It wasn't great, and so and then also with some of the also moral education now with, I'm going to say with the LGBTQ, I don't believe in those things. Those things do not follow the moral code that my family follows. If that's for your family, fine. That's not for mine. We were looking at a summer program for my son for the summer, and they teach that they have it in their books. And I'm like, why is a 3 and 4-year-old need to learn? I said, he's not coming here. And I asked the teacher, like, why? She's like, oh, because we have some parents that are, and X, Y, and Z. But like, but that's not what we are. So now you're educating him with something that I don't even believe in and support. And that also tells me that you may say things that are against what I believe. And sometimes I may not know what you're teaching him until he comes home months later. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Where he's explaining weird behavior or saying strange things. So it's not catered to the way we want to teach our child. We also know our child's, his birth card and his chart and things like that, as far as his natural abilities, and they're not going to be able to tune in and hone in a curriculum for that. So it's just generic, and it's contrary to, again, the problems that he would need to solve as a Black boy growing up to be a Black man.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing too. This is why I think it's important for, and I'm agreeing with you, but this is why I have this show, because I think it's important to hear women's concerns, people's concerns about what's going on in the public educational system. So again, it is like a cookie cutter method. It is like a one size fits all. Right. And they're just going to be shoving, like just providing information that's not always going to serve or turn on a child's critical thinking. It's not going to turn on a child's an elevated sense of thinking or like their self-esteem. Right now, like you said, again, I just think children should not be taught, even, as heterosexual women. I'm sure any responsible adult can tell you this. There's just certain things you don't teach children. Right. I don't have to tell my 5-year-old, I like to do these types of things, intimate things. Right. You don't tell children that, you know what I'm saying? But there's a certain way to teach children about the sacred conception. Right. Why that's important, why a man and a woman come together. It's not just so. Right. There is a connection that you share, right? Absolutely. But you don't just, get it off because, I just have to scratch an itch. Right. There's an itch I feel and I need to scratch it. That's what society teaches. Absolutely. It's the process of getting together in that way with your opposite, because it is a universal law of gender. There always has to be, that's balance. You have to have an opposite, okay? Right. And you come together for a reason, and there is a bond that is shared, and it is natural, it is sacred. And so if you believe that, then I think it is important to teach at home.
Absolutely.
Teach at home. You got to get the children home because these are your values. And then we're going to be perpetuating Western, like a Western kind of thinking, and it's anti-Aboriginal.
Absolutely.
If we're just being honest.
Absolutely.
It's anti-Aboriginal. So
and those things, again, they go against our culture historically, presently, and futuristically, you know. So yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you something. In your personal experience or in your practice, are you seeing more families moving towards home birth and homeschooling?
Yes. I'm seeing more move towards both. And I think people are just finding a general dissatisfaction with the hospitals and the schools. So women, I see a lot of women who've had a previously traumatic experience, especially saying, this time I want to do it at home. Because hospital, they forced me into a C-section. They didn't hear my concerns. I was uncomfortable and in pain and nobody said anything. Or it's like, you know what? I had a pretty good birth experience in the hospital. I could have done that at home and been way more peaceful. They're watching videos now online with like the beautiful pool, water births and the candles and the incense. And I'm like, wow, that looks so sacred and beautiful, right? So they're really yearning for a different experience. And I think, like you were saying, it's always a balance happening at the same time. So in a day and age where we have so much social media and so much AI and things like that, people are starting to feel the opposite and say, you know what? I don't want to be on my phone as much. I actually want to go meditate and read and do affirmations. I don't want to look at everybody else's life as much. I want to look inward and focus on what's happening with me, So it's like, I don't want to depend on that doctor. I want to think about my own natural powers, have my baby at home, so kind of going back to our roots and to, our natural cultural, practices. I think that's really been heightened. Same with the school, I think from, children getting sick all the time at school, school coming home like, my child got a cold again. And they're tired of that. They're tired of their child being reprimanded unnecessarily. They're tired of their child coming home, like you were talking about to me before the other day about teaching about slavery, and the child's coming home traumatized about what that whole thing was. And they're like having to figure out how to teach them on that. Like, you know what? I might as well just bring you home and then I can teach you how I want you to learn those things. So I think people are just generally disappointed and frustrated with what's happening in the school system, even with the shootings and more violence. They're just feeling like uneasy about this whole thing. It's like, okay, how can we bring everything back home so we can feel more nurtured and more sacred and more comfortable and safe and happy? They're seeing their children not be happy and complain about school. So there's a general need and desire to want to come back home. And I think one of the biggest gaps right now is a lack of education, though. Like even for me, when I was like, okay, we're going to homeschool our son, I'm like, whoa, like, where do I start? I reached out to you, like, okay, bought your booklet, like, okay, because I need some education so that I'm not overwhelmed. I want to learn from somebody who's done this before successfully. She has the code, so I want to follow her code to help me. So same thing with home birth education. It's like, I've had a successful home birth experience and successful breastfeeding experience. So learning from someone who has done what you want to do successfully is the way to decrease the stress and decrease the overwhelm, because they have a blueprint of how they were able to do that. So I think getting that education for couples that are interested in homeschooling and home birthing is like the key for them to not get deterred to do that and to be empowered.
That is so important. You're right. Just going along those lines, it really does come back to women. We really need to take our power back in the sense as just being the first caregivers. I mean, I don't think, especially young girls, I mean, you have to go through, I'm going on 47. So
look good.
I'm working on it, but thank you. But going on 47, there's certain things I realized, but it's not drilled into you in the public school system, like the importance that like you really are. Do you know future generations are going to come out of your womb? And how that'll have an effect on the entire earth and humanity, what comes through your womb.
Right.
I mean, it's not like into young girls' heads. It's, it's the fast and let me do it. You know, you got to do like a little dance, you know.
Right.
Let me just do my thing. What do they call that? What they call that? Just I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do me. It's like, and what is that exactly? What is that? You know what I'm saying?
And girls are born with all of their eggs.
Exactly.
All of your eggs. So that means whatever you're doing, you're out here living your best life, so-called, everything you're doing is going to all those future babies. You know, so we have to be very responsible, and we have, like you said, we have to be educated from the beginning. That this is a sacred temple. Like, you are literally carrying around the future in your body, like literally. So yes,
especially when you, especially if you're if you're pregnant with a female child, you're carrying your grandchild's eggs, because the female child you're carrying has to be born with all of her eggs. So you're literally walking around with future generations in your womb, because you could have a female child. So if young girls are actually taught this, like, oh, it's so sacred, you know, you have to find your husband in a certain way, you have to take care of your body, all these things.
Absolutely.
It's so important. So home birth education, and just, you know, your academic education and your life education, all of that is important. So I'm just clearing a couple of things off the screen, some pop-ups. But yeah, ooh, this is fire. As females, I get like this. I appreciate the divine masculine. I'm so grateful that we have men here to protect and provide, and the men need to feel like they have something they need to protect and provide for. So if women aren't stepping up and we're not teaching them, right? As mothers, if we're not taught as young women, and then when we have our children, we're not teaching, this is very sacred, you know, all these things, and your body is special, and then the men are like, oh, well, she's a, what do you call it? She's a thought. I don't have to worry about that. I'm not bringing her home to my mama. But I will go do some other things with her. So it's like this whole, it's all connected. It's all connected. So we need to bring the children back home and be those nurturers and educators.
Absolutely.
Now, let me ask you another question here. What is the age of the youngest couple that you've had as clients?
Late 20s, I think 28. Yeah, 28.
That's fairly young.
Yeah.
And do you find that the concerns for younger couples are the same as some of your more mature couples, or do they vary widely, you know, depending on the ages?
I think they're different, actually, because I think a lot of the women who are more in their 30s, they're coming to me having a previously traumatic experience. So they had a previous experience that wasn't ideal for them. Where the younger ones are trying to avoid that, right? So when you're in a state of recovery, like, I had this thing happen and I am not doing that again, you have a different incentive, right? Than someone who's like, I heard that home birth is kind of a good thing, right? You know what I mean? This is kind of trending now. So that's kind of the biggest gap. They both have the same, you know, motive, but the women who are in their 30s are just really motivated to say, you know what, that thing was horrible, and I have to know that there's a way that I can have a better experience. So those couples do appear to be more eager to be in the course, you know, right now. Then also same with the birth workers that are in the course. Some of them as well have gone through a traditional birth curriculum, you know, to be a midwife or to be a doula, but they're not being taught the specificity of what it means to be a Black woman, a Black Aboriginal woman, as far as what you should be eating. Your diet should be different. Your movement, if you have had trauma from, maybe you have an experience of trauma, but you're carrying trauma from your mom, passed down stories about her birth with you or your friends. So being able to really go through a process where you learn how to help women, or to be able to yourself to dissolve that trauma as well, because you can bring that trauma into your next experience, you know? And so, and then also planning your birth. Like, you have to know, how do I afford this home birth? How do I handle insurance? It's different than the hospital as well. So again, having that education is super important. And the younger couples, sometimes just, they're not sure about all that. So they're kind of like brand new, you know, like, okay, tell me all, tell everything. And those that are a little bit older, like, I've been through all this. It was a mess. Help me fix this. So next time I'm not doing that, so.
Okay. And so what is your advice for young couples who are expecting, or advice for young men and women who aren't expecting when it comes to just today's topic, like, of giving birth at home and educating at home? What are the advice that you would give to expecting young couples?
Okay. I would say the biggest thing is to get proper education, because if you are about to conceive or you have already conceived, you need to understand if you want to have a home birth, like I was saying before, that outcome is connected all the way to conception. And so what you're doing before you conceive through conception is going to help you get the outcome you want. If you're not eating properly and you're only following diet trends, paleo, vegan, plant-based, etc., but you're not following the nutritional plan based on your Black biology, which we call carbon-based, then you potentially will have problems. That was an experience that I had. My first pregnancy, I was vegan. I thought that being vegan was like the end all be all, and that caused complications for me. And I had to humble myself and then get the proper education to have a different experience. So eating carbon-based made a world of difference starting at conception, through my pregnancy, and through breastfeeding. It allowed me to breastfeed, 100% full time, no bottles, no formula, nothing, for full 12 months. And I'm still going with my current baby, right? So people also don't understand that your milk supply, your milk quality, that's all connected to how you eat, and also stress and other things too. So getting that proper education ahead of time and knowing how to eat properly, knowing how to move your body, knowing how to adjust your mindset, and knowing how to plan your birth properly, holistically, financially, all those things, you need that education so you can get to the outcome that you ultimately want. And same thing for the homeschooling. If you go into it and you're totally overwhelmed and you're trying to structure your homeschool based on how the institution was, you may feel yourself burnt out and heading into failure, right? So you need to consult with somebody who has done the thing that you want to do successfully. That's the biggest thing. You're trying to vet a coach or vet a teacher, say, have they had a successful outcome of what I'm seeking? So getting the education, that could not be, held lightly. That's a really, really important thing. And then secondly is trusting yourself to do it. That's really number one. It's the first, have the trust, say, I can do this. I may understand I have a gap in what I know and what I don't know to get that outcome, but I trust that I can get that knowledge, I can acquire it, I can utilize it, and I can have the outcome, because I'm designed, as a woman, I'm a natural nurturer, I'm a natural educator. You're educating your baby when you're carrying them in the womb. You're teaching them how to love. They're feeling all your emotions and all the food, how to eat, how to love, how to feel, all those things you're teaching them while you're carrying your baby, how to choose a mate, because they hear your mate's voice, and that mate should be supportive and loving as well. So you're teaching all these things even earlier than and so we have to get that proper education and have that trust in ourselves. And we can do it because this is what we've been doing. We're reclaiming what we've been doing. We're going through kind of a rites of passage with saying, you know what, I'm taking back all of my traditions, all of my culture, and I'm going to step fully into it. And I'm going to reject societal things that are telling me that I can't do this, and I'm going to have a C-section, and I can't breastfeed and use Similac, like rejecting that. And we're walking into our true divine selves as divine indigenous Black women on this planet. So
that's beautiful. And a lot of people aren't aware. And again, this just goes back to education, because you first have to be aware. A lot of people that are melanated, and we use Black as a colloquial term,
right.
But a lot of so-called Black people aren't aware that they have deep, deep ties to this land. Now, so-called Black people are original everywhere, but a lot of us aren't aware that we have ties actually to America. So if we were born here, if they just start doing their genealogy, they'll find out that they have deep, deep, deep roots here in America. And I know I found that out when I did mine back to the 1600s. And so there was a lot of in Virginia, and my husband too, deep roots in Virginia, way, way back. So I think people once we start educating, we can reclaim those traditions, reclaim our roots, and also just reclaim all the things that were lost. So it's very, very important to do that. I'm so glad I had a chance to speak with you today and learn more about home births. I mean, my last birth, like I said, was with a midwife, and you do get a chance to eat afterward.
Right.
Because you're tired and everything. And I was like, so I can walk? So she said, because in the hospital, they tell you, oh no, lay down, stay in bed.
Right.
And you're scared to walk, so she's like, all right, take your baby, go home. I was at a birthing center and,
nice.
take your baby, go home. And it was like a home-like setting. It was like a bedroom. Nice. It was very nice. I could say whatever I wanted with the lighting and just everything. What do you want to do? I was able to have my family in the room. At the hospital, you can't do that.
Right.
So,
especially with COVID. When COVID happened too, they said that the spouse couldn't come either. You had to choose between your spouse or your doula, or your spouse or your mother. Yes, when COVID happened. So that's also was another push that helped a lot of couples say, you know what, I'm not doing a hospital thing, or you're having to wear a mask while you're giving birth. I mean, what are we?
That's crazy. That's crazy. You need to be able to breathe. That's what they tell you to do, to breathe through. You have to work with contractions. How are you going to do that with a mask on?
Exactly. And they teach a hyperventilating breath. They teach, I mean, that's hyperventilating. That's not helping your body open.
It's not good.
Right?
You need to be relaxed.
You have to have a deep, slow breathing. So your body's like, oh yeah, we're chilling. We're relaxed. We can open up and have our baby. Not when you're hyperventilating, your body constricts. So if your body constricts, your legs constrict, your uterus constricts. So the baby's like, it's not safe to come out, right? But if you're breathing deep, everything is relaxed and open and fluid. And baby's like, all right, mom, I'm ready, because you're relaxed, Babies are very intuitive, so they're feeling you. So it's really important.
Frequency is very important. Okay, so Nyima, before we close out, I want you to share your contact information, how people can contact you, your social media contacts. So can you share that with everyone?
Sure, yes. So I have 2 pages. My business page for my course is called eShell Birthing. That's spelled IXCHEL, and then birthing, just as normal. And the personal page is Nyima Amaru, spelled NYIMA AMARU.
Okay.
And that's on Instagram.
Okay, that's awesome. So I just want to remind everybody to support our sister Nyima in her business. She's doing very, very important work. And again, it was great having you on the show. We'll see you next time on Bringing It Home with C.N.Smith.